Growing old is a beautiful thing. It's a blessing even. But we live in a society that strangely perceives growing old as being unproductive and becoming a burden. But that isn't the case. And it's about time that we as a society began to change those perceptions. Let's have a conversation on prioritizing healthcare for the elderly with Dr. Tasneem Yamani, a GP and a certified practitioner of geriatric medicine. Hello and welcome to Sheila Lives Out Loud. Thank you for finding this channel. Well done, you. Now click subscribe and hit notifications so you never miss an episode when we upload. And we are living out loud at Sai Suites Apartment Hotel, luxury redefined. I tell you, it's got everything you're looking for. It's just perfect. It's got the most beautiful restaurant. Maybe if you're looking to propose, say I do, such like things, come check it out and enjoy yourself. And we are joined by one of my absolute favorite people in the whole entire world. And yes, there are quite a few of them, but none as special as she is. Hey, I almost said to say is. Please welcome Dr. Tasneem Yamani. She is a general practitioner and she's got certification and a very deep and passionate interest in geriatrics. Unajua geriatrics ndi nini? Yeah. Keep watching. Doctor, hello.
Hello.
Doctari. Apparently, doctors are now called doctari, so can I use the proper expression?
Yes.
Hi, doc.
Hi, Sheila.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I'm so happy to finally connect with you because we've talked, we've engaged, but today is one-on-one.
Yes.
Karibu sana to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we connected a couple of years ago when I posted something online. My family and I had traveled to Mombasa and we witnessed the case of an elderly Asian lady who was there with someone who was supposed to nurse her. And what we ended up seeing happen to this lady was just disgusting. It was awful. She was abused, really. That was the word, because she wasn't being fed the way she should be fed. The help was insulting her and asking her to eat, and then someone gives you a spoon and then moves the spoon aside, and it was obvious that this lady, she was elderly, and she'd probably suffered maybe a stroke or some motor neuron disease, and she was being abused.
Right.
And it continued until her family joined her for their holiday. And there was one particular point in time where they were all at the table and they went to serve themselves. And I remember her holding on to one of the gentlemen who was obviously related to her. And she couldn't speak, but we understood she didn't want to be left alone with this particular lady. Elderly care in Kenya today. It's a mess.
I think it's something that we are not prepared for. And I think the lack of preparation is coming from a lack of understanding, a lack of awareness, a lack of, knowing that growing old is not a disease. I think we have put growing old as something that is a disease or is a condition, if not a disease.
I'll tell you something else, Doc. We look at growing old as a bad thing.
Yes.
People sometimes will come onto my social media and say, lakini umezeka. So we say things like, we begin to say growing old is an insult. How
it's
can
become
you
a
use
stereotype.
age?
I mean, it's something called ageism, where we assume that there are certain things that come with age, which is not really true. We assume you're going to grow old, so you're going to lose your memory. We assume that you're going to grow old, so you won't be able to walk. We assume that you're going to grow old, so you're going to bedwet. My role, why I'm so interested in, is changing that perception. Bedwetting at no age is normal. Losing your memory at any age is not normal. Yes, what aging is, or what the actual definition of aging is slowing down. And a degeneration of certain your biological processes in your life. So maybe today you're able to walk 20 kilometers, but maybe when you're 70, you're still walking, but maybe you'll walk 5. That's not necessarily bad.
It's not
it's
a bad
slowing
thing.
down.
It's a slowing down.
And it's like taking it backwards. Like when a baby is grown, they don't walk and run. They start with baby toddler steps falling down. Older persons are now grown and now they're going downwards, but that's not a bad thing. And it's really important for us to know that aging is a process. it's not something that happens overnight. How you're going to age is not how I'm going to age. And it's a very individual, personal thing. And there are certain factors that can help making that process better. Like, I mean, you're in production and also, you know, everything that's a process is followed by steps to follow, and then you reach a point where there's an outcome.
Yeah.
How you're going to follow the process is going to determine your outcome. So when I say aging is a process, you start aging from the day you're born.
From the day you're born, you're aging.
So why are we considering aging a bad thing?
Why
is it called aging? We are aging from the day we're born.
Every one of us is. I mean, once in a while, someone's going to drop a little, you know, snide comment and say, oh, you're aging. And one time I just say, but guess what, honey? You're aging too.
We're all aging.
As long as you have lived here for another 24 hours, we're all aging. And you should be thankful for it.
Exactly.
Because life, we can't engineer life.
Right.
None of us can create an extra day for ourselves.
True.
So live in that moment and appreciate the processes as they come. But you know, I took on, when I was working on my master's program, one of the units that we studied was the sociology of aging.
Right.
Like you've just said, it's a process, and it's not just a biological process, it's also a psychological process.
And that's where geriatrics becomes a very misunderstood field in medicine. Geriatrics is not understood because everybody assumes that a geriatrics is just an older person.
Right.
And an older adult, not an older person, but an older adult. So what you'll do for an adult applies to an older adult. But that's then saying, why are children treated differently? Aren't they just younger adults?
Right.
But that's the difference. There's children, there's adults, and then there's geriatrics. Because your body is at a different place in time with its functional, its physiological ability, its mental capacity, its ability to do things. And that's where it becomes a specialized care. And the care for geriatrics is not just about visiting your doctor every day or every month. It's about a holistic approach. You have to look at their financial needs. You have to look at their social needs. You have to look at their spiritual needs. You have to look at their physical needs. You have to look at nutrition. And that's when I go back to the first point I said, that there's nothing normal about aging that is a process that is a set rule in stone. A 70-year-old here might be different from a 70-year-old in their neighborhood. One is frail and the other is running a marathon.
That's true.
And it's not like children. Children have milestones they reach, and within a certain age gap, they're supposed to have expected to do a certain things. That's not how old people are.
Exactly.
My expectations for any 70-year-old cannot be the same as any other 70-year-old. And the point of geriatrics is not to cure disease, is to create health. Because we're living in an era where we are going towards a greater population of older persons, about the age of 60.
Is really good. It's a great time to age right now.
Let's put it this way. There was a time the retirement in Kenya was 55. Now it's 65. But 65 is still very young to retire because people are very functional at 65 and the new life expectancy is 80. What's the point of a life lived longer with no quality in it?
Exactly.
And quality begins with health. I mean, for you and I even, if we have no health at a young age,
what makes you think you're going to achieve it after 50, after 60?
And with no health at any age, life has no meaning.
Right.
And that's where this conversation, like you talked about the older person who was mistreated, that is one of the commonest things but least reported, because everyone assumes old people are either a burden to society, non-productive, no use giving them anything because what's the point? You know, as in, there's nothing to get. Yes, you've lived your life. Exactly. And you've lived your life. What more are you contributing? But this is what I stress on every time I have a conversation with somebody. If an older person today can learn to use a mobile, that is new technology. Hell, I struggle with my mobile. Half the time I don't know what the apps on it are for. My daughter is teaching me how to use them.
Right.
But my father, who's 80 today, can use a mobile. He can call, he can take pictures, he can take videos, he can share them. He learned that at 80, and you're telling me that person is not productive?
That they're not productive, that they can't be taught, that they can't be useful. They can.
What is happening is they're not being given an opportunity.
Yes.
The lack of the opportunity is depriving them of a quality of the years lived. And that leads to them getting depressed, feeling hopeless, feeling useless, feeling like an atom.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm insignificant. Why am I alive anymore? I've done everything I needed to. But has everyone ever thought about it? You go to retirement.
Yeah.
When you're about to retire, think about this. You've lived your life 40 years working years, and suddenly overnight, Your life is going to take a dimension you have no idea, an unknown.
And then for some people, you've been living in the city in all these 40 years.
Yeah.
And then somebody says the job has come to an end. And so you have to live the city that you've known and existed in. And you've got to leave your friends and familiar places so that you can relocate to a village where you used to visit once a year or maybe twice a year.
Right.
And to begin life afresh. And then you still expect this person to be woohoo and yay
at that. And I mean, not saying that age is disability,
No.
but even for you and I today, if
Even
somebody said
we
just
couldn't
uproot
do
your
that.
life and change,
Uproot
you're
and
going to go
change.
through apprehension.
It's not easy.
It's not.
It's not easy
And
at
that's
all.
the question. Why must we force somebody to change? Why can't we prepare them for the change?
Right.
And that's where this comes in, that aging or being prepared for the later, again, I said aging, which is wrong. Being prepared for the later years of your life begins when you're 40.
Yeah.
Because if you're 40, something that people never talk about is dying, of course. Because at 40, who's thinking about not being there tomorrow?
Yeah.
But at 40, you have your prime of health more often than not. Are you ever going to think you might get dementia? No, you've never thought it. But it comes, and dementia is not knocking on the door saying, I'm coming. It's not sending you an invite.
No. And it even doesn't
It's
tell you
just
that
going
it's
to
here
show up.
already. It's
And
just,
when it's here,
Yeah.
it comes so slowly.
So
And the
quietly.
day it hits you, it'll hit you out of what you assume is nowhere. Yet it's been telling you, hello, I'm hanging around. But
I'm
because...
moving in, started with the toothbrush, and now the whole clan is in the house.
And not only that, it started with something as simple as a personality behavior. Again, another misconception.
Right.
We all assume old people, I mean, when you define an old person, I'll ask you a question. I know you're interviewing me, but I want to hear your view. When you hear old, what comes to your mind? The image.
Well, you know, there's so many ways that it's been phrased and used, such that the first thing I think about when people say, you're so old, I get a negative perception. I feel like, okay, you're telling somebody that this is a person who can't even eat roast meat because their teeth are falling out. I'm thinking, this is a person who's no longer engaging with life. It's a person who's sitting there every day, waking up in the morning saying, today is the day I finally go home.
So you're waking up to a grouchy old human being.
Yeah, so that's the perception.
And that's the perception. Now,
and
this
it
is
shouldn't be.
That's what I mean. Why? If somebody who was a laughing, talking person suddenly is grouchy, aren't you going to wonder what's wrong? Why are you labeling it as it's part of
Saying
being
it's
old?
part of growing old.
It's
No.
not. More likely than not, that aggression or change in behavior pattern
Yeah.
could be a sign dementia is knocking on the door. Could be a sign depression is knocking on the door.
Yeah.
Could be a sign of something physically wrong with their health. And older persons, the one thing I have learned in the 2 years that I have been doing this, with a passion,
Yeah.
is older persons hate doctors and they hate the hospital, not because they don't like a doctor,
Yeah.
but because they are fearful. They're fearful of a hospital visit because they're scared they're going to end up in hospital and being admitted. They're not worried about the money. They're not worried about any of that. I mean, of course, that is there,
That's
but that is
also a
not the
concern,
priority.
but the
The priority
primary-
is you're taking me out of where I'm happy to a place where I know nobody.
Yeah.
I can't do what I want, how I was doing it. And the sad part is us as children who are taking care of older persons, it all comes out of a good place in our heart because we love our parents. We'll take them to the hospital because we think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But for that older person, you're forcing your opinion onto them and making them think that they have no right to an opinion either. And that is the worst mistake we're making. Yes, I mean, nobody likes hospitals.
That's
and you
true.
feel like they're being difficult because they're not going to. They're not being difficult. You're not understanding
You're not
where they're
understanding
coming
them. And
from.
all it would take is just a simple conversation, just
And
sitting.
if
and
you
saying,
had a
"What are
doctor
these
you could speak to
concerns?"
who understands geriatrics, they would
Yeah.
explain to you that it's okay for them not to go to the hospital. In fact, it's probably safer for them to be treated in their house.
Yeah.
Because just like children, older persons are also immunocompromised. Not because they have a sickness. It's part of the
It's
building
part
of your
again
body.
of the process.
It's your body
If
is
it's already,
immunocompromised.
in a
You're
different
already
phase,
weakened.
yeah.
So you going out to a hospital, you might go to treat a foot ache or a leg ache or a joint ache, and you come home with a pneumonia that you didn't have. So instead of, you've taken care of the pain, but you're ending up
But
with
now
a more
you
serious,
come
which
back
will
home with
end up
something
taking
else.
you to getting hospitalized.
Right, which is what they didn't
Which
want
could have
in
been
the
prevented
first
in the
place.
first place if a doctor would just come and see you in the home. And that brings me to the conversation of home care, which is virtually non-existent in our country.
That's true.
And that's, I don't know if this is something that's appropriate to say, but it's a failure of a system as a whole. Because we're in by the end of this year, you're looking at older persons over the age of 65 doubling the population that is under 5.
Wow.
So the older person in Kenya today, as we stand in the 2020 year, by 2050, you're looking at the older population globally being literally triple or double of what it is today, and it's outnumbering the younger population because one, fertility rates are growing lower, but the older population is still living longer.
Yeah, they're living longer. Technology and better healthcare means we have access to ways and means that
you have better nutrition compared to before.
Longevity, yeah.
Healthcare is better than where it was. Disease controls are better. There's more disease, yes, but
there's
treatment available.
And treatment is much better than it used to be.
Life expectancy is increased, definitely. And people are having less kids today. From having 10 kids per family, we're down to 2 to 3 children per family.
And I'm part of that statistic that's responsible for that because I'm part of a generation that decided or, has pretty much lived life without necessarily feeling the pressure to have children.
Exactly.
And you can't come and start saying, no, because again, it's a personal choice.
It is.
And it's a lifestyle for some people, but maybe not for others, but it does impact these numbers.
The statistics, exactly. Yeah. So at some point, you'll have so many older persons, but less younger persons, but what are our systems in place?
Yeah.
Do we have healthcare for them? Do we have a geriatric hospital that addresses geriatric needs? If you go to a mall, is it really conducive for an older person to be there in the bathroom?
Very many are very hostile.
You can't take an older person out because even to a restaurant, they have baby chairs, but they have no rails for an older person. Why is that discrimination existing? Because there is no awareness. Because you're saying the mentality is, if you're at that age, what are you doing outside the house anyway?
You should be home.
But they should be allowed to go out and eat where they want to. And that brings me to the conversation of a socially, psychologically, physically supportive environment.
Yeah.
Because if you have that environment, you're creating an opportunity for this older person to be productive, to give back, and to be able to live better years.
Right.
There's no point of me having 20 more years of my life if I'm going to be bedridden. What is the quality of life I have? Nothing. But if I have 20 years where I can play with my grandchildren, or if no grandchildren, I can play with my peers.
Yes.
Because somebody created that environment for me.
You can go walk in the park together. Even just saying walk in the park, how many parks are we going to walk in? Right. Just normal parks where you can walk and find flowers and sit.
And we don't even have that for the younger person.
For the younger person.
The older
person.
When it comes to healthcare, like I said, taking older persons to the hospital will take away the years of their life. Like, I'll give you an example. An older person above 70 falls down and has a fracture. They were probably walking, talking, living life to the fullest. That fracture changes them from an able person to a disabled person. And I mean disability, meaning psychologically, emotionally, mentally. They get depressed because now they were walking and doing their own thing.
And now
they lose the live for life.
Yeah.
So if we were able to identify all that with something, in geriatrics is something we call a comprehensive geriatric assessment. It can be done for any age group above a certain age. It has value for certain spaces where you can identify frailty, we can identify a decline in cognitive function, we can identify early depression and do something about it before it reaches the point where the person is bedridden, not able to feed themselves. And it brings me to your story about that lady. Fear. Older persons are so scared because they're dependent.
Yes.
It's like a child. If child abuse is going on, nobody is going to know unless the child
cries, speaks, or there's evidence
and they can't talk.
And they can't.
And then they won't talk out of the fear. Because if I say something, I might get hurt further. So this older person knows I'm dependent on you to take care of me. If I complain about you and you're left with me, you might hurt me even more. I'd better keep quiet.
We take a breather for now and pick up the conversation in part 2 with Dr. Tasneem Yamani on the fear, abuse, and the difficult and negative impact that moving elderly persons to the village has on their quality of life. As always, drop a comment in the comment section below and let's catch up next week for another episode of Sheila Lives Out Loud. In all that you do, live out loud.